in the sky that said it had to be simple to end up being complex. It's just a remarkable fact about the universe. So why not celebrate it? The fact that pi, right?
Let's say the numbers together. 3.1415926.
Well, we got a few
That's
geeks over
pretty good.
there.
There's a nerd fest
We
down
got
here.
a
That's
geek thing
beautiful.
going on over there.
Not bad, not bad.
The fact that you take a circle of any size, a circle the size of the universe itself, and divide it by its own radius, and you get that number, that's beautiful. I have to pause, and I get misty thinking of this. I'm sorry, that's just another one, that the atoms and molecules in your body are traceable to the crucibles in the centers of stars that manufactured these elements over its lifespan, when unstable, on death, exploding its enriched guts across the galaxy, scattering it into gas clouds that would ultimately collapse and make a star and have the right ingredients to make planets and people. Which means we are part of this universe. As I've said many times, and this goes back, not only are we in the universe is in us. That is a profound concept. And I think it's the greatest gift that astrophysics gave culture in the 20th century.
Vision and brilliance. When you all saw the title of this forum, you were all thought of as visionaries in your own way, as brilliant in your own way. That must be pretty hard to, I don't know, put into words if people ask you questions about that. But what does that mean? What does it mean to be brilliant, to be visionary?
I'm just doing what I love, and if people call it brilliant or visionary, that's fine. But I think, thank the one person agrees. Thank you. But I think there's a bigger point here. There's a bigger point. I think if everyone had that luxury, unfortunately we don't, had the luxury to pursue a life of exactly what they love, we would all be ranked as visionary and brilliant. I mean, I'm not trying to be quaint, I'm just saying if you got to spend every day of your life doing what you love, you can't help but be like the best in the world at that. And you get to smile every day for doing so. And you'll be working at it almost to the exclusion of personal hygiene, and your friends are knocking on your door saying, don't you need a vacation? And you don't even know what the word vacation means, because what you're doing is what you want to do, and a vacation from that is anything but a vacation. That's the state of mind of someone who is doing what others might call visionary and brilliant.
Did you want to jump in, Neil?
No, I just, exactly.
You have better words than that. You're right. I'll just say, I just bare my soul, and you say exactly.
And Neil,
I mean,
I promise that when I come to write up my account of what we said up here, I will have said much better words. That is the joy of being a writer.
Good.
No, I think that we get to look good because we get to do what we want. And, people go, well, you were such a visionary because you wrote graphic novels before anyone was writing those graphic novels. And how? And I go, well, that was what I wanted to write. It wasn't, I could say, well, rationally, it seemed like there was a whole lot of work that hadn't been done in graphic novels. I found novels intimidating. There were 3,000 years worth of novels that really good people have been writing, and I'd have to go up on the shelves, but there's only about 100 years worth of comics, and there were some good ones, but there were things nobody had done, and I could metaphorically grab a machete and head off into the metaphorical jungle and hack my own path. And that seemed a really cool way to do it.
that would be a metaphorical path.
Absolutely. Not a literal
The metaphorical
path.
machete and a metaphorical.
And, and fortunately, at no point did I metaphorically kill anybody.
At Johnny Basher via Twitter wants to know what would happen if the Earth stopped rotating for a second.
Oh, yeah, that would be disastrous. disastrous. Because right now, here in New York, you can calculate at our latitude, we are all moving with the Earth at 800 miles an hour, due east, because Earth is rotating. If you stopped Earth and you weren't seat belt buckled to the Earth, you would fall over and roll 800 miles an hour due east. It would kill everyone on Earth. People would be flying out of windows, and that would just be a bad day on Earth. I'm just saying. Now, if somehow we all slowed down, so anything not bolted to the Earth would fly due east, 800 miles an hour. That's what happens to you in a car if you hit a brick wall and you're not wearing a seatbelt. You keep going. That's why you get hurt in those kinds of accidents. But if somehow we all slowed down with the Earth, then okay, it's fine. I mean, people think, well, somehow we'll be weightless or we'll lose our atmosphere. No, it's just that you'll have really long days.
At Ski Boot One asks, what's the thing that has surprised you most in the physics world?
In the physics world, I'm surprised, can I give a cop-out answer there? I'm surprised that the United States could lead the world in particle physics for most of the 20th century and then just abandon that leadership. And now the most powerful particle accelerator is in Europe at CERN, the Center for, the European Center for Nuclear Research, but if you spell that in French, it spells CERN.
They're ahead of us.
And it's that particle accelerator that found the God particle, the famous Higgs boson. And we're just looking over across the pond saying, oh, can we, a few of our scientists are on the project, but we're not the leaders of it. So you ask, what surprises me in physics? That we could, by vote of Congress, cede that leadership that quickly. And I'm astonished. I wonder, what country am I living in? It's not the one I grew up in. It's something different. I know it's a cop-out answer, but that's how I feel.
Danger Dave 723 tweets, what obstacles do we have to overcome in order to facilitate interplanetary travel?
Oh, okay. You know, Voyager just left the solar system. The Voyager spacecraft, it was in all the news a few weeks ago, traveling fast, all right? And it's at this boundary between the sun's influence and the galactic influence. And so you can say, well, if you hitched a ride on that, how long would it take you? Because that's been going for 40 years. How long would it take you to get to the nearest star? The nearest star in a galaxy that has 100 million stars in it. 100 billion stars in it. The nearest star take you 40,000 years. So the question, what does it take to become interstellar space? We either have to figure out a way to live a really long time or send a crew of astronauts that are really fertile so that the 80th generation down the line is the one who lands at the destination, or we have to find out something new about the fabric of space and time so that we can basically invoke the famous warp drive engines that are common in Star Trek, allowing them to cross the galaxy during the TV commercial.
Jean Lacharon tweets, I love that. What can we expect the North and South poles to shift? When can we expect them to shift? And what manifestations will we experience?
They don't shift.
They don't shift.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about pole shifting as we went into the year 2012, or the 2012 hysteria, which was basically a hoax on scientifically illiterate people of the world. And so the pole, Earth rotates, and the pole bobs up and down over tens of thousands of years, and we oscillate like this, the way a top does. When you see a top begin to slow down, nobody plays with tops anymore.
I love tops.
Well, you gotta love a top. I played with them.
I love them.
You spin it, and then it begins to.
I love that.
The official word is precess. We do that, and we do one full precession every 26,000 years. We don't flip.
Agree to the claims by atheists that I'm one of that community. I don't have the time, energy, interest of conducting myself that way. I'm perfectly happy going to see the rock opera Jesus Christ Superstar. I have Handel's Messiah on my iPhone, along with Bach's B minor Mass. That's some of my favorite bits of music. This is what I do, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm perfectly fine with having religious people who live all around me. I'm not trying to convert people. I don't care. We're in a religiously pluralistic society. Most of what accounts for the immigration waves into this nation were people fleeing religious persecution in their hometown. And no one will deny the richness of this country as a product of the immigration that unfolded. I'm okay with that. Just keep it out of the science classroom. That's my little dog. Maybe it's a poodle, I don't know, but it's a... So you asked me if I'm agnostic. I'm agnostic. And it's more that I don't really care. I don't want to have to spend all this energy, but I keep getting called out into the boxing ring.
largely against my wishes.
Blow the whole lot up. I mean, that's the next.
And there's an implicit assumption that you're making inadvertently, possibly, that intelligence is an inevitable consequence of the evolutionary record. And I'm skeptical of that, because if that were the case, what we call our intelligence would have happened multiple times in the fossil record, and it hasn't. Whereas other things have shown up plenty of times, like the sense of sight and locomotion. There's some rather inventive ways things can get around the world. My favorite is the snake, of course. No arms, no legs, yet it gets around just fine. I'm imagining an alien visiting Earth, stumbling on a snake, the only creature it sees, right? And then it goes back and tells its home people, "You're not going to believe what I saw. There's a creature on that planet. No arms, no legs. It can still get around. It detects its prey with infrared rays and can eat things 5 times bigger than its head." And they'll think the guy was on drugs.
Yeah.
It's an ordinary snake sitting here on our Earth.
Yeah.
Another, just while I'm on the subject, big disappointment I have are Hollywood aliens. And I don't know who to blame for this, Hollywood or biologists that advise them. Hollywood aliens are way too anthropomorphic for me. Even E.T., he had a head, shoulders, arms. Okay, he had 3 fingers instead of 5. There's still fingers at the end of a hand. He had legs, he had feet. That's human. And look at the diversity of life on Earth to draw from if you want to think about the ways of being alive. I'm just so disappointed. And not even that I know that I can help them, but one of my favorite aliens ever was the Blob. Did you see that movie?
No, I don't see as many movies as you.
Blob is classic. It's just, so that alien was a blob, right? That's what it was. And it would just kind of move along, and it would grab onto you and suck out your blood and keep moving. And it was non-anthropic in concept, and it came from space. And I just thought that was an attempt to try to create some kind of way of being alive.
That's a very laudable attempt. It is interesting to look around the animal kingdom and count up the number of times that some things have evolved. I mean, eyes several dozen times, ears quite a large number of times. Echolocation, that's finding your way around by sonar, only 4 times. So that's
a bat and who else?
A bat, whales, and 2 different groups of birds, cave-dwelling birds. And a few rudimentary examples in some shrews and sea lions, but really 4 different times. Intelligence and language of the humankind only once, as you pointed out.
So it can't be that important for survival.
Well,
if natural selection is at work, it should have shown up many more times.
You think so? But I mean, it's a genuinely interesting point that I think biologists haven't thought about enough, is to go around the animal kingdom counting up the number of separate arisings of something, because that does tell you something about what you might expect elsewhere in the universe. You'd expect eyes, you might expect echolocation, hypodermic syringes, stingers, about a couple of dozen. I'm talking about independent evolutions now. You look about spiders.
Our version of that would be called guns. Yeah.
Called what?
Our version of the hypodermic stinger would be called a gun.
Yes,
right,
okay.
to sting someone with.
But I'm talking about something that penetrates the body and injects poison.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting question. And another relevant point is you look around the world at different island continents and say, how many times, how similar are they? You look at Australia, the Australian mammals, for example, and there are very, very powerful similarities between Australian mammals, which evolved entirely independently of mammals in South America, independently again of mammals in Asia and Africa. And so, again, that gives you a kind of a clue for how predictable evolution is. Other worlds are going to be very different, but we perhaps shouldn't write off the possibility that the Hollywood aliens are they might not be that unimaginative. I mean, my colleague Simon Conway Morris has even suggested that there is very likely that there will be, if not humans, at least bipedal, big-brained, language-toting, hand-toting, forward-looking eyes for stereoscopy, pretty much humans. He thinks it's highly likely. He's got a religious agenda, I'm sorry to say, for that. But I, like him, I appreciate the power of natural selection. I think that whatever...
By the way, I think if he were if he were a creature other than a primate, he might be giving a different list of things
I think
that
that's
matter.
right. Yeah, I think that's probably right.
The horse doesn't have two eyes facing forward, but the horse damn near can see directly behind it. And so the horse would be valuing that fact.
Oh, I'm not denigrating horses at all. I mean, there are lots.
I'm just saying that's your first sign that there's bias is you start listing the human features that you would want in your alien.
I don't want to say that I'm not picking on humans because they're superior, but because they're us. I mean, we have stereoscopic vision, we have three-dimensional vision, horses don't. They have a different kind of vision, insects have a different kind of vision. Bats have echo. I mean, it's not vision, but it's using sound to produce what I would guess inside the bat's brain is probably perceived rather the same way we perceive visually, because why wouldn't you use the tools of the brain, of the mammalian brain,
to create an image,
to create a model of the world? I've even speculated.
By the way, that they showed that in, forgive me, the movie Daredevil.
Do they have bats?
He's blind, and when it rains, he likes when it rains because the rain hits people, and he hears the different sort of reflections of the sound, and he saw his girlfriend for the first time in the rain. There's the image of her.
Okay, but my speculation is that bats hear in
It's America. I got to talk about our movies here. Sorry.
My speculation is that bats hear in color. Because why wouldn't you use color? Color is just hue, perceived hue, is nothing more than a label that the brain uses.
Precisely. That's all it is. Yeah. Color, you attach it to some sequence of changed phenomena.
And so bats would most usefully use color as a sign. For example, the difference between a furry moth and a leathery locust might be perceived as red versus blue. Mm-hmm. And that would be a very useful way for natural selection to have tied the labels of hue onto something that would seem very strange to us. But
if you look at the chemical ingredients of life itself, you remember from biology class, we're mostly water. And good old water is H2O, 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen. And if you could look at the sort of the element budget of life, hydrogen is number 1, as expressed in the water molecule. The number 2 in the human body is oxygen, turns out. Number 3 in the human body is carbon. 4 is nitrogen. 5, you find on all lists, is other. Okay, now if you go to the universe, that's the O on the periodic table. You didn't know that? That's not for oxygen, it's for other. So, you go into the universe, number 1 ingredient in the universe is hydrogen. That was true in life. Number 2 ingredient in the universe is helium. We don't have that one.
Yeah, it doesn't like anybody.
No, how come? Well, because helium is chemically inert. You can't do anything with it even if you wanted. You can inhale it, okay? And sound like Mickey Mouse, yes. Next in the universe is oxygen. Next, carbon. Next, other. Thank you, in the third row there. So, actually that was the second row. They must be related to the second row here. We are 1-for-1 matchup with the most abundant ingredients in the universe. Of these, carbon is the most chemically fertile element in the entire periodic table. You can make more kinds of molecules with carbon than all other molecules combined. So, if you were going to experiment through the forces of nature with complex chemistry, and you had to pick an element to base it on, carbon is your man. Or your woman, however that goes. Okay, so what I'm saying is, given what carbon is capable of doing, perhaps we shouldn't be so surprised that there's life, because we are carbon-based life. We're just another one of the things carbon has rolled up its sleeve. Maybe life is inevitable, given the abundance of carbon and oxygen and nitrogen and hydrogen in the universe. Try to invert that view. Otherwise, you're left thinking, hey, we're special. You know I would give you right to say you're special? If life on Earth were made of an isotope of bismuth. That stuff is nowhere in the cosmos. And then we're made of it, we're special. Okay? But if we're the most common ingredients of the matter that we know and love, you don't have an argument. And with regard to cell phone use, there's a very important fact of science, and that is the act of measurement. It's a fascinating thing, measurement, because you can never measure anything precisely. That is, with unlimited precision. You can only measure it with the uncertainties of your measuring device. And all you can do in the lab is try to constrain how uncertain that measurement is, but at some level it will always be uncertain. And here's what happens. If you're trying to measure a phenomenon that does not exist, the variations in your measurement will occasionally give you a positive signal, as well as a negative signal. If that positive signal is the idea that maybe A causes B, in this case cell phones cause cancer, a paper gets written about that result, and then people get concerned that cell phones might cause cancer or power lines might cause cancer. This goes way back. And so, in fact, if you look at the full spate of these studies, even those that they thought not to publish because it was not a positive effect, there's some cases where, in fact, there's less cancer. And so these are the phenomenon of a no result. When you actually have A causing B, the signal is huge. It is huge and it's repeatable in time and in place. With cell phones, that repeatable signal is yet to emerge from the total experiments that are done on it. That being said, if you're worried, almost every cell phone they have the cell phones on your hip and you've got an earpiece. So just do that if you're worried. But otherwise, I can either say the jury is still out or the experimental results are consistent with no effect at all.
There's something, Doc, called the Kessler syndrome. Would you explain what that is? Because you could better than I.
Well, I don't know specifically what that is, but the scenario that...
Then I'll tell you.
No, the scenario that was portrayed with total catastrophic satellite failure by one satellite breaking apart, taking out 10 others, and each one taking out 10 others,
right,
until the whole space volume is filled with debris, so it takes out everything that's there. That's a real scenario.
The syndrome is that there's so much crap. When it hits another piece of crap, it shatters into many more.
Isn't that what I just said?
Okay.
No, I thought that's what I just said.
So. I say it happens exponentially. That's what's different in my experience.
That's what 1 going to 10 going to 100. But okay.
But here's what they're worried about, that there's so much of this that in time it will bring down the satellites.
Yes, it can happen.
And we could not have cell phones.
No, cell phones operate off of towers, typically.
But don't they bounce it off satellites?
Occasionally, but...
What about texting? That bounces off a satellite. No?
So most of your cell phone traffic is cell tower. But
all right.
But your point is well taken.
Here's what's clear.
My kids are
Bill
gonna jump
wants
off a building
Cuban
if
cigars
they're
and he
gonna
wants a
attack
cell phone. That's my takeaway of this whole thing.
The point is, yes, if you shatter a satellite, this is debris moving 17,000 miles an hour, and even chips of paint, if you get hit with them, that's a bad day for you. So yes, it is bad, and they took that to an extreme limit in the movie, and that was one of the truer things represented in the movie.
Right.
Compared with other things like she's a medical doctor repairing the Hubble telescope. Right. I don't think so. Okay? I don't send auto mechanics to operate on your heart. All right? So this was, so I tweeted that, and people got upset with me for that.
So upset. They were upset that...
They went...
Right, but they're okay that George Clooney is a ghost.
Spoiler alert!
Or not.
Yeah, it was more like a hallucination.
No, that's a hallucination.
It's really more like a hallucination.
You're right.
That's right. It was her fault, not his. He wasn't the real ghost. But here's the point. If the debris is low enough in the atmosphere, it will eventually drop out of orbit because Earth's atmosphere does not have a sharp edge. It just fades to fewer and fewer atmospheric particles. And almost no matter your height, up to several hundred miles, you're going to hit some particles and it'll slowly slow you down. And eventually you drop back to Earth burning up. In fact, we take full advantage of the atmosphere taking you out of orbit for satellites that we want to purposefully take out of orbit. If you take them out of orbit at a particular spot, it'll get lower and lower and plunk down in the Pacific Ocean, the great toilet bowl of satellite debris.
Are we going to be quizzed on this?
No, I'm just
Because I'm not taking notes.
He is
I
so
should be taking notes.
brilliant for a guy who looks like he plays bass in the Jay Giles band. That's all I have to say.